My name is Mattie, and at 56 years old, I thought I had seen it all. I built an auto repair business from the ground up, survived widowhood, and raised a daughter on my own. I was proud of the life I created with these two hands, even if they were always stained with grease. When my daughter Isabelle got engaged, I wanted to give her the wedding of her dreams. I paid for everything, every single dollar. But I never expected what would happen at the reception when her new husband stood up to make a toast. Before I tell you what happened that night, I would love to know where you are watching this from. Drop your location in the comments below, and if you have ever felt underestimated because of what you do for a living, go ahead and hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe because this story takes a turn you will not see coming. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. I grew up in a small town outside San Antonio, Texas, where my daddy ran a two-bay garage that smelled like motor oil and possibility. Frank Martinez was his name, and he was the best mechanic in 3 counties. While other girls my age were learning to bake pies and curl their hair, I was underneath a '67 Chevy, learning the difference between a carburetor and a fuel injector. Daddy never once told me I could not do something because I was a girl. He just handed me a wrench and said, "Figure it out, Matilda." That is what he called me. Matilda. Never Mattie. But after he passed when I was 23, I shortened it. Felt like I needed a fresh start, a new name for the woman I was becoming. I met my husband Paul that same year at a church barbecue. He was a high school English teacher, soft-spoken and kind with glasses that were always sliding down his nose. We married when I was 25, and he supported my dream of opening my own shop even when people said I was crazy, a woman running an auto repair business. In 1992, folks did not know what to make of me, but I did not care. I had learned everything from Daddy, and I was good. Real good. We had Isabelle 2 years after we married. She was born on a Tuesday morning in July, screaming her head off with a full head of dark hair, just like mine. Paul and I were over the moon. We had our little family, our little life, and it was enough. Then, when Isabelle was 8, Paul died in a car accident on Interstate 10. A drunk driver crossed the median and hit him head on. He did not suffer, they told me, like that was supposed to make it hurt less. After that, it was just me and Isabelle. I threw myself into work, expanding the garage. Daddy left me into something bigger. I hired 2 mechanics, then 5, then 10. I worked 16-hour days, came home smelling like transmission fluid, made dinner for my daughter, helped with homework, and fell into bed exhausted. But I was building something that would provide for us, something that would make Daddy proud. By the time Isabelle graduated high school, Frank's Legacy Auto Repair had 15 employees and a reputation for honest work and fair prices. We were not rich, but we were comfortable. Isabelle got a full scholarship to University of Houston for business administration. She was smart as a whip, that girl. Always had been. She graduated top of her class and got hired by a big marketing firm in downtown Houston. She wore pencil skirts and heels to work. She carried a leather briefcase. She was everything I was not: polished and professional and clean. And I was proud of her, so proud. But somewhere along the way, I noticed she stopped talking about what I did for a living. When her co-workers asked about her family, she would say, "My mum owns a business." Never, "My mum runs an auto shop." Never, "My mum is a mechanic." I understood, sort of. The world she lived in was different from mine. She was trying to fit in with people who wore suits and had business lunches and talked about quarterly earnings. I was the woman who showed up to parent-teacher conferences with grease under her fingernails, no matter how hard I scrubbed. It stung a little, I will not lie, but I loved her and I wanted her to be happy, so I did not push it. 2 years ago, Isabelle called me all excited. "Mum," she said, "I met someone. His name is Preston, and I think you are really going to like him." Preston Whitmore was 32, 3 years older than Isabelle. He worked at a big investment bank doing doing something with portfolios and hedge funds that I did not fully understand, even after he explained it twice. He came from money, old Connecticut money, the kind where your great-great-grandfather had a building named after him at Yale. The first time I met Preston was at a Sunday brunch at a fancy restaurant in the Galleria area. He stood when I approached the table, shook my hand with a firm grip, and said, "Mrs. Martinez, it is a pleasure to meet you. Isabelle has told me so much about you." But when I asked what Isabelle had told him, he said that you are a successful business owner, which was true, but also not the whole truth. Throughout that brunch, I watched him. The way he cut his eggs Benedict into perfect squares. The way he checked his watch, a Rolex that probably cost more than my truck. The way he smiled at Isabelle, but it did not quite reach his eyes when he looked at me. When he asked what kind of business I owned, I told him straight. An auto repair shop. Been running it for 30 years. He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. "Oh," he said, "that is interesting. Do you work on foreign cars or domestic?" "Both," I said. "We are a full-service shop." He nodded slowly like he was processing this information, then changed the subject to a vacation he and Isabelle were planning to Napa Valley. After brunch, when Isabelle walked me to my truck, I asked her, "Are you happy, sweetheart, Mum?" She said, "He is perfect. He is smart, successful, and he treats me like a queen." I wanted to say, "But does he respect you? Does he respect where you come from?" Instead, I just hugged her and said, "Then I am happy for you." 1 year later, Preston proposed. They set a wedding date for June, 18 months away, and that is when things got complicated. The wedding planning started almost immediately after the engagement. Isabelle and Preston wanted a big wedding, the kind you see in magazines with 350 guests and a venue that costs more than my yearly salary. Preston chose the location, the Jefferson Hotel in downtown Houston, a 5-star establishment with crystal chandeliers and marble floors. The first planning meeting included me, Isabelle, Preston, and a wedding coordinator named Felicity, who wore 4-inch heels and carried an iPad covered in rhinestones. We sat in a conference room at the hotel while Felicity showed us packages and options. The platinum package, she explained, includes a 7-course, dinner premium open bar, live jazz band, and elaborate floral arrangements. It accommodates up to 400 guests. The investment for this package is $125,000. I nearly choked on my water. $125,000. Preston leaned back in his chair. "That sounds perfect. We want the best." Felicity smiled and tapped on her iPad. "Wonderful. Now, traditionally, the bride's family covers the ceremony and reception costs, while the groom's family handles the rehearsal dinner and honeymoon. Will that arrangement work for everyone?" I looked at Preston, waiting for him to say something about his family contributing. His father was a retired hedge fund manager. His mother came from shipping fortune. They had a summer house in Martha's Vineyard, for crying out loud. But Preston just nodded. "That works for us." I cleared my throat. "That is a lot of money for one day." Isabelle reached over and squeezed my hand. "Mum, I know, but this is my wedding. Our wedding. I want it to be special. It will be special no matter what I said. But maybe we could look at some other options that are a bit more reasonable." Preston shifted in his seat. "Mrs. Martinez, with all due respect, Isabelle and I have a certain standard we would like to maintain. Our friends and colleagues will be attending. We want to make the right impression." The right impression? Like my budget was something to be embarrassed about. I looked at my daughter, saw the hope in her eyes, and heard myself say, "Okay, we will do the platinum package." Isabelle jumped up and hugged me. "Thank you, Mum. Thank you so much. This means the world to me." Over the next 6 months, I wrote check after check. Deposit for the venue, $40,000. Photographer, $8,000. Videographer, $6,000. Flowers, $12,000. The dress Isabelle fell in love with, $7,000. And on it went. I drained my savings account, the one I had been building for 30 years, putting away $500 here, $1,000 there whenever business was good. The account I thought might someday be a down payment on a little condo on the beach when I retired. It all went to the wedding, but the hardest part was not the money. It was the way Preston's family treated me during the planning process. His mother, Constance, was a thin woman with silver hair, always pulled back in a tight bun. She spoke with a Boston accent and had opinions about everything. At one planning meeting, I suggested serving Texas-style barbecue for the rehearsal dinner, something casual and fun. Constance literally wrinkled her nose. "Oh dear, no, that is far too rustic. We were thinking a wine-pairing dinner at Brennan's." Preston's father, Howard, barely acknowledged me at all. He shook my hand, once asked what part of Mexico my family was from original. I said we have been in Texas since before it was Texas, then never spoke to me again unless absolutely necessary. 1 month before the wedding, I took Isabelle to lunch at our favourite Tex-Mex place, the one we had been going to since she was little. We ordered chicken fajitas and sopapillas, and I asked her the question that had been weighing on me. "Are you sure about this? About Preston?" She looked surprised. "Of course I am sure. Why would you ask?" That I chose my words carefully. "He is a good man, I am sure. But honey, do his family values align with ours? Do they respect where you come from?" Isabelle put down her fork. "Mum, what are you really asking?" I took a breath. "Do they respect me? Does Preston respect me?" She looked uncomfortable. "They just come from a different world, that is all. They are not used to people who work with their hands." "That should not matter," I said. "I know," she said quickly. "And it does not matter to Preston. He loves me. But does he love all of you? The part of you that grew up in an auto shop, the part that is proud of where you came from." Isabelle was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Mum, can I ask you something? At the wedding, when people ask what you do, could you maybe just say you own a business, not specify what kind?" My heart sank. "You are ashamed of me." "No," she said, eyes filling with tears. "No, Mum. I am not ashamed. I just want everything to go smoothly. Preston's family is very traditional and a little judgmental. I do not want them to look down on you." Too late for that, I thought. But I said, "Okay, sweetheart. If that is what you want, I will not bring up the shop." She hugged me tight. "Thank you. I love you so much, and I am so grateful for everything you have done for this wedding. I know you have given up a lot." I had given up everything, but as long as she was happy, it was worth it. At least that is what I told myself. What I did not tell Isabelle or Preston or anyone in his family was that I was not just a mechanic who owned a small shop. That was true once, but it had not been the whole truth for 5 years. 5 years earlier, a silver Mercedes SUV pulled into my shop with smoke coming from under the hood. The driver was a tall man in his 60s wearing a perfectly tailored suit. He explained that he was passing through Houston on his way to a business meeting when his engine started overheating. My head mechanic took a look and said it would be a 3-hour job, minimum. The man looked at his watch, clearly frustrated. "I have to be in Corpus Christi by 5. I walked over, wiped my hands on a rag and said, "Let me take a look." I diagnosed the problem in 10 minutes. Radiator hose with a small split. "I have the part in stock. I can have you back on the road in an hour." The man looked skeptical. "An hour guaranteed," I said. 50 minutes later, I handed him the keys. "All set. That will be $180. He looked at the invoice, then at me. "You own this place." "Yes, sir. For almost 25 years now." He pulled out his wallet and handed me $300 bills. "Keep the change. And here." He gave me his business card. "My name is Lawrence Hartfield. If you are ever interested in expanding your operation, give me a call." I looked at the card. Lawrence Hartfield, CEO, Hartfield Automotive Group. I nearly dropped it. Everyone in Texas knew that name. Hartfield owned the largest network of luxury car dealerships in the Southwest. He was worth billions. "You are joking," I said. He smiled. "I never joke about business, Ms. Martinez. You just saved my day, and you did it with skill and efficiency. That is rare. Call me." 3 weeks later, I did. And that call changed my life. Lawrence needed someone to handle high-end maintenance and repair for his dealerships across Texas. He was tired of subpar service and wanted a partner he could trust. I will be honest, I told him. I have never worked on this scale before, but you know quality, he said, and you know how to run a tight operation. That is what I need. Take a chance, Mattie. So I did. I took out a loan, expanded my shop-hired specialized technicians, and became the exclusive service provider for Hartfield's Texas dealerships. Within 2 years, my revenue tripled. Within 4 years, I had opened 2 additional locations. I paid off my loan, bought the building my original shop was in, and started earning more money than I ever imagined. But I did not change my life. I still drove my 10-year-old Ford pickup, still lived in the same 3-bedroom house I bought when Isabelle was little, still wore jeans and steel-toed boots to work. Money did not define me. The work did. I invited Lawrence to the wedding as a valued business associate. On the invitation, I simply wrote Lawrence Hartfield and guessed. I did not explain who he was to Isabelle or Preston. I figured they would not care about meeting some random business contact of mine. That was my first mistake. The morning of the wedding arrived with clear blue skies and temperatures in the low 80s. Perfect June weather in Houston. I woke up at 5 in the morning, too nervous to sleep. I made coffee, sat on my back porch, and watched the sun come up. Today, my baby girl was getting married. I put on the navy dress I had bought for the occasion. It was the nicest thing I owned, with 3/4 sleeves and a hem that hit just below my knees. I even had matching navy heels that I practiced walking in for 2 weeks because I was so used to boots. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. My hair, usually pulled into a ponytail, was styled in soft waves. I was wearing makeup, actual makeup, something I had not done since Paul's funeral. I looked nice, professional, like I belonged at a fancy wedding, but my hands gave me away. No matter how much I scrubbed, there were faint traces of grease embedded in the creases of my palms under my nails, the hands of someone who worked for a living. I arrived at the Jefferson Hotel at noon. The ceremony was scheduled for 3, and Isabelle wanted me there early. I found her in the bridal suite, surrounded by 6 bridesmaids, a hairstylist, a makeup artist, and enough hairspray to ignite a small fire. Mum, she breathed when she saw me. She was already in her dress, a stunning ivory gown with lace sleeves and a cathedral train. She looked like a princess. "You are so beautiful," I said, and my voice cracked. "Do not make me cry," she laughed. It took Stephanie an hour to do this makeup. I hugged her carefully, trying not to wrinkle anything. "I am so proud of you, baby." The ceremony was held in the hotel's grand ballroom, which had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. White roses everywhere, thousands of them. Candles lining the aisle. A string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon. 350 guests filled the seats, dressed in their finest. I sat in the front row alone. Isabelle's father should have been there. Paul should have been walking her down the aisle. But it was just me in a sea of Preston's relatives and their country club friends. When the music changed and Isabelle appeared at the back of the ballroom, my breath caught. She was walking herself down the aisle like we discussed. She wanted to honour her father's memory, but also show her independence. That was my girl. Preston stood at the altar in his tuxedo watching her approach. For a moment, just a moment, I saw genuine love in his eyes. Maybe I was wrong about him. Maybe he really did love her for who she was. The ceremony was beautiful. They exchanged vows they had written themselves. Preston promised to honour and cherish Isabelle, to be her partner in all things, to build a life filled with love and respect. I wanted to believe him. After the ceremony, guests moved to the reception hall while the wedding party took photos. I wandered around, feeling out of place among Preston's relatives. They all seemed to know each other, talking about ski trips to Aspen and golf games at the club. I grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and found a quiet corner to observe. That is when Howard Preston's father found me. He was a tall man with white hair and a permanent expression of mild disdain. So he said, settling next to me. "Where is Isabelle's father?" I heard he passed. "Yes," I said. "Many years ago." He nodded slowly. "Must have been hard raising her alone." "What did you do for work?" "I run an auto repair shop," I said, waiting for the judgment. It came subtle, but unmistakable. "Oh," he said, "how quaint. Someone has to keep our cars running, I suppose." He laughed at his own joke. I did not. Constance joined us, holding a martini. "We were just talking about Isabelle's upbringing," Howard said. Constance smiled tightly. "Yes, it must have been quite difficult. Preston grew up with every advantage, of course. Private schools, summers abroad. We wanted to ensure he had the best possible foundation for success." The implication was clear. Isabelle did not have those advantages because I could not provide them. "Isabelle worked hard for everything she achieved," I said evenly. "She earned that scholarship on her own merit." "Of course," Constance said. "We are just grateful she found Preston. He will take care of her now, like I had not been taking care of her for 29 years. I excused myself before I said something I would regret. This was Isabelle's day. I would not ruin it. The reception began at 7. The ballroom had been transformed again, with round tables covered in cream linens, gold chargers at each place setting, and centerpieces that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. A live band played jazz music on a small stage. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I was seated at a table near the front, with a few distant cousins I barely knew. Lawrence Hartfield was seated several tables away with the other business associates and colleagues of Preston's. I caught his eye and waved. He nodded back with a smile. Dinner was served. 7 courses, just like Felicity promised. Lobster bisque, arugula salad, seared scallops, filet mignon, roasted vegetables, cheese course, and finally a lemon tart that dissolved on your tongue. Each course was paired with a different wine. It was the fanciest meal I had ever eaten, and all I could think about was the invoice. $12,000 just for the food. After dinner, the lights dimmed slightly, and the band transitioned to softer music. The MC, a friend of Preston's named Kenneth, took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for toasts. We will begin with the best man, Garrett Thompson." Garrett stood a clean-cut guy in his early 30s who worked with Preston at the bank. He told a funny story about Preston in college, something about a failed attempt to impress a girl by pretending he knew how to sail. Everyone laughed. Next was Preston's older sister Beatrice. She was tall and elegant, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my car. She talked about growing up with Preston, how he was always ambitious, always driven to succeed. And now, she said, raising her glass, he has found the perfect partner to build a life with. To Preston and Isabelle. Everyone raised their glasses. To Preston and Isabelle. Then Kenneth said, "And now the mother of the bride, Mattie Martinez." My heart pounded as I stood up. I walked to the front on shaky legs, took the microphone and looked out at 350 faces. I found Isabelle in the crowd. She smiled at me, encouraging. I took a breath and began. "Isabelle," I said, "my beautiful daughter, I remember the day you were born like it was yesterday, July 17th, a Tuesday morning. You came into this world screaming, letting everyone know you had arrived, and you have been making your presence known ever since." People chuckled softly. "Raising you on my own was the hardest thing I have ever done. There were days I did not know if I was doing it right. Days I worked 18 hours and still barely made ends meet. But every sacrifice, every long night, every worry, it was all worth it to see you grow into the incredible woman you are today." I paused, my voice thick with emotion. "You are smart, strong, independent, and kind. You have worked so hard for everything you have achieved, and I could not be more proud. And now, watching you start this new chapter with Preston, I hope you build a life filled with love, respect, and partnership." I raised my glass. To Isabelle and Preston, may your love be as strong as the foundation we build our lives on. Everyone applauded. Isabelle stood up, tears streaming down her face, and walked over to hug me. "Thank you, Mum," she whispered, "for everything, for this wedding, for my whole life. I love you so much. I love you too, baby." I handed the microphone back to Kenneth and started walking back to my seat, my part complete. But Kenneth said, and now the groom would like to say a few words. Preston stood up, all smiles, and took the microphone. The room settled into attentive silence. "Thank you all for being here," he began. "This has been an incredible day, truly a dream come true. Isabelle, you look absolutely stunning. I am the luckiest man in the world." Isabelle beamed at him from her seat. Preston continued. "I want to thank my parents Howard and Constance for their love and support. I want to thank my groomsmen for standing by my side, and I especially want to thank my new mother-in-law Mattie." He turned to look at me. My stomach dropped. Mattie has worked incredibly hard for this wedding. She paid for all of this, every single detail, and I think we should all show our appreciation for that. People applauded politely. I smiled, uncomfortable with the attention, but Preston was not done. I mean, he said, his tone shifting slightly, "It really is remarkable. It is not easy for a mechanic to save up this kind of money. This wedding costs more than most people make in a year. But Mattie did it. She managed to pull together enough to give us this beautiful celebration." The room went quiet. Something in his voice had changed. It was not gratitude anymore. It was something else. "So let me raise a toast," he said, lifting his champagne glass high. "To my mother-in-law, Mattie Martinez. Even though she is just a stinking mechanic who spends her days covered in grease and dirt, she somehow managed to scrape together enough cash to pay for this wedding. So thank you, Mattie, for cleaning yourself up long enough to be here tonight." The room went dead silent. I sat frozen in my chair, unable to process what I had just heard. Did he really just say that in front of 350 people? Isabelle's face went pale. "Preston," she hissed, but he was smiling like he had just told a hilarious joke. What I am complimenting her. "Cheers, everyone!" A few people raised their glasses awkwardly, not sure what else to do. Most sat in stunned silence. I felt like I had been slapped across the face in front of the entire world. Every sacrifice I made, every dollar I spent, every year I worked myself to exhaustion to provide for my daughter. He just reduced it all to a joke, to an insult. I looked down at my hands, at the grease stains I could never fully wash away. The hands that built a business, the hands that raised a child alone, the hands that wrote check after check to pay for this wedding, and in that moment, I wanted to disappear. But then someone else stood up. "Excuse me," a deep voice said from across the room. "May I have the microphone for a moment?" All heads turned. Lawrence Hartfield, tall and distinguished in his tailored suit, was standing at his table. He walked toward the front with quiet authority, the kind that comes from decades of commanding boardrooms and billion-dollar deals. Kenneth handed him the microphone, looking confused. Lawrence stood next to Preston, who suddenly looked very small and very young. "Good evening, everyone," Lawrence began. "My name is Lawrence Hartfield. I apologize for the interruption, but I cannot in good conscience remain silent after what I just witnessed." Preston's smile faltered. "Sir, I was just making a joke." "A joke," Lawrence repeated flatly. "You just publicly humiliated the woman who funded this entire wedding, the woman who raised your wife, and you think that is funny?" Preston stammered. Lawrence turned to address the room. "I have known Mattie Martinez for 5 years. In that time, she has proven herself to be one of the most talented, dedicated, and honest business people I have ever had the pleasure of working with." He paused, letting that sink in. "You see, Mattie is not just a mechanic. She is the owner and CEO of Frank's Legacy Auto Repair, which operates 3 locations across the Houston area. But more than that, she is the exclusive service provider for all of my dealerships in Texas. A murmur went through the crowd. People knew the name Hartfield. If you lived in Texas and owned a car, you knew that name. For those who do not know, Lawrence continued, I own Hartfield Automotive Group. We operate 47 luxury car dealerships across the Southwest, specializing in high-end European vehicles. Our annual revenue exceeds $2 billion, and I trust exactly one person with the maintenance and care of our entire Texas inventory. That person is Mattie Martinez. Preston's face had gone from smug to pale. Lawrence was not finished. In the 5 years we have worked together, Mattie has built a company that employs over 40 people across 3 locations. She has expanded into specialized services for exotic and vintage vehicles. Her reputation in the industry is impeccable. CEOs, professional athletes, and yes, even billionaires, they all trust Mattie with their cars because she is the best at what she does. He turned to look directly at Preston. So when you call her just a stinking mechanic, you are not only insulting her, you are demonstrating your own ignorance and lack of character. You are showing everyone here that you value people only by their social status, not by their integrity or achievement. The silence in the room was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. Lawrence continued, his voice softer, but no less powerful. Mattie did not just save money for this wedding. She invested her life's work into giving your wife, into giving your new family a beautiful celebration. She did not have to do that, but she did because she loves her daughter. And your response was to mock her in front of 350 guests. Preston opened his mouth closed. It opened it again. I did not mean... Yes, you did, Lawrence said. You meant every word, because people like you look down on people like Mattie. You see someone with grease under their fingernails and think they are beneath you. But let me tell you something. Mattie built her business from nothing. She worked 16-hour days for 30 years. She raised a daughter alone after losing her husband. She earned every dollar of her success through skill, determination, and integrity. Can you say the same? Preston said nothing. Lawrence turned to address the room again. I have attended many weddings in my life. I have seen elaborate celebrations that cost millions of dollars. But I have never seen anything as impressive as what Mattie did here. She gave her daughter the wedding of her dreams, not because she wanted to show off, but because she wanted her child to be happy. That, ladies and gentlemen, is real love. That is real success. He raised his glass. So here is my toast. To Mattie Martinez, a woman who built an empire with her bare hands, a woman who proves every single day that success has nothing to do with where you start and everything to do with the integrity you bring to your work. A woman who deserves far more respect than she received tonight. He looked straight at me as he said, Mattie, you are a remarkable woman. Do not ever let anyone make you feel small. Then he drank, and slowly people around the room stood up. First 1, then 5, then 20, then more. They stood and applauded, a standing ovation that echoed through the ballroom. I sat in my chair, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of humiliation anymore, tears of being seen, of being valued, of having someone stand up for me when I could not stand up for myself. Lawrence walked over to my table and extended his hand. I stood on shaky legs and took it. He leaned in and said quietly, I meant every word. Thank you, I managed to whisper. Preston stood frozen at the front of the room, the microphone hanging limply in his hand. His face was red, whether from embarrassment or anger, I could not tell. Howard and Constance sat rigid at their table, not looking at anyone. And Isabelle, my beautiful daughter, was crying, but not happy tears. She stood up, walked past Preston without looking at him, and came straight to me. Mum, she said, her voice breaking, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I hugged her tight. It is okay, baby. No, she said, it is not okay. I should have said something. I should have stopped him. I was so worried about fitting into his world that I forgot to defend my own family. I am ashamed of myself. You have nothing to be ashamed of, I told her. She pulled back and looked at me. You built something amazing. You worked so hard, and I never told anyone because I was worried they would judge you. But the only person who should be judged is me and him. She turned to look at Preston, who was now being lectured by his father. Whatever Howard was saying, it did not look pleasant. The rest of the reception was awkward, to say the least. The band tried to resume playing, but the energy was gone. Some guests left early, muttering excuses about babysitters and early flights. Others came up to me, shaking my hand, telling me how impressed they were. One woman, someone I did not know, stopped me on her way out. I am a patent attorney, she said, and I just want you to know what you have built is incredible. Do not let anyone diminish that. Another man, one of Preston's colleagues from the bank, actually apologised. I had no idea Preston could be so disrespectful. For what it is worth, you seem like a hell of a businesswoman. Lawrence stayed close to me for the rest of the evening, a quiet presence of support. We did not talk much. We did not need to. He had said everything that needed saying. At around 10, I found myself standing alone in the hotel lobby. The reception was winding down. Isabelle and Preston had left for their honeymoon suite upstairs, but not before a tearful goodbye where Isabelle hugged me for 5 full minutes and whispered apologies I kept telling her she did not owe. Preston had not approached me again. He could not even make eye contact. I should have felt triumphant. After all, Lawrence had publicly defended me, put Preston in his place, made sure everyone knew the truth about what I had accomplished. But instead, I just felt tired, bone-deep tired. Lawrence found me in the lobby, ready to head home. Yeah, I said. I think I am done with fancy parties for a while. He smiled. Can I walk you to your truck? We walked in comfortable silence through the parking garage until we reached my old Ford. I unlocked it and turned to face him. Thank you, I said, for what you did up there. You did not have to do that. Yes, I did, he replied. Mattie. In the 5 years we have worked together, you have never once asked me for special treatment or recognition. You just show up every day and do exceptional work. But tonight, someone needed to speak up for you. I was honoured to do it. I wiped at my eyes, trying not to ruin what was left of my makeup. I spent 30 years building my business, raised my daughter alone, and in 30 seconds, he made me feel like it was all worthless. Lawrence shook his head. He did not make your accomplishments worthless. He revealed his own lack of worth. There is a difference. You walked into that room tonight as a successful businesswoman who loves her daughter. You are walking out as the same person. He is the one who has to live with what he said. I nodded, knowing he was right, but still feeling the sting. The next few weeks were difficult. Isabelle and Preston went on their honeymoon to Italy, 2 weeks of touring Tuscany and the Amalfi Coast. While they were gone, I threw myself back into work. There is something comforting about the smell of motor oil and the sound of pneumatic wrenches. In my shop, I knew exactly who I was and what I was worth. My employees had heard about the wedding through the grapevine, small town, big gossip. They rallied around me, bringing me coffee, cracking jokes to lighten the mood, reminding me why I loved this place. My head mechanic, a guy named Tommy, who had worked for me for 12 years, said it best. Boss, anyone who looks down on you is someone looking up from way below. You are standing on a mountain you built yourself. When Isabelle and Preston returned from their honeymoon, my daughter called me immediately. Can we talk? She asked. Please. We met at a coffee shop halfway between her apartment and my house. She looked tanned and rested, but her eyes were troubled. Mum, she started, and then the tears came. I have been thinking about the wedding non-stop, about what Preston said, about how I did not defend you. I am so ashamed. I reached across the table and took her hand. Honey, you were in shock. We all were. That is not an excuse, she said. I should have said something right away. Instead, I just sat there. And then Lawrence, someone you work with, someone who has known you for just 5 years, he stood up for you when your own daughter would not. You came to me afterward, I said. That matters, but it should not have taken me that long, she insisted. And I need you to know I have been thinking a lot about what I asked you before the wedding, about not mentioning the shop. Mum, I was wrong. I was so wrong. I let Preston's family make me feel like what you do is something to hide. But you built something incredible from nothing. You put me through school. You gave me this whole wedding. And I repaid you by being embarrassed of you. I squeezed her hand. You were never embarrassed of me. You were trying to navigate a new world. I understand that. Do you forgive me? She asked, her voice small. There is nothing to forgive, I said. You are my daughter. I love you, always. She wiped her eyes. I talked to Preston. We had some very serious conversations in Italy. Oh, she nodded. I told him that what he said was unacceptable, that he humiliated you and embarrassed me, that if we are going to make this marriage work, he needs to fundamentally change his attitude about people who work with their hands. What did he say? She sighed. At first he tried to defend himself, said it was just a joke, that he did not mean anything by it, but I did not let him off the hook. I told him that intent does not matter when the impact is hurtful. I told him that he needs to apologize to you sincerely and prove through his actions that he respects you. And he promised he would. She pulled out her phone. He wrote you a letter. He was too embarrassed to send it while we were away, but he asked me to give it to you. She handed me her phone. On the screen was a long email addressed to me. I read it carefully. The letter was more thoughtful than I expected. Preston acknowledged that what he said was cruel and indefensible. He admitted that he had been raised to value certain types of success over others, but that was his problem to fix. He apologized for belittling my work, my sacrifices, and my achievements. He asked for a chance to prove he could be better. It was not perfect. Words on a screen could not erase the hurt, but it was a start. I handed the phone back to Isabelle. Tell him I appreciate the letter. And tell him that I am willing to give him a chance to prove himself, but it will take time. She nodded. I understand. And Mum, I am going to do better too. I am going to be proud of where I come from. Proud of you. Over the following months, Preston did try. He came to my shop once, brought me a fancy coffee, and walked around asking questions about the cars we were working on. It was awkward, but he was making an effort. He started referring to me as his mother-in-law instead of just Mattie. He invited me to dinner at their apartment and actually asked about my business. Was it perfect? No. Did I fully trust him? Not yet, but I could see he was trying, and for Isabelle's sake, I was willing to let him prove himself over time. The most surprising change came in my relationship with Lawrence. After the wedding, he called me to check in. Then he invited me to a charity gala his foundation was hosting, then to a business dinner with some potential investors. We became real friends, not just business associates. He introduced me to people in his circles, and I watched as their assumptions about me shifted when they learned what I did. Some were genuinely impressed, others remained skeptical. I stopped caring which category they fell into. 6 months after the wedding, I was sitting in my office at the shop, going over invoices, when Isabelle stopped by unannounced. She was holding a small gift bag. What is this? I asked. Early birthday present, she said. Your birthday is not for another 2 months, but I could not wait. I opened the bag and pulled out a framed photo. It was a picture of me from the wedding, but not from the formal portraits. Someone had captured me during Lawrence's speech. I was looking up at him, tears on my cheeks, but smiling, really smiling. Below the photo, Isabelle had added an engraved plaque. It read, "To Mum, who built an empire with grace, strength, and grease-stained hands. I am proud to be your daughter." I could not speak. I just pulled her into a hug and held on tight. That photo sits on my desk now, right next to the one of Isabelle in her wedding dress. Every time I look at it, I remember that night. Not the humiliation, but the moment someone stood up and said, "This woman matters." This woman built something real. I am 56 years old. I have been working since I was 14. I have grease permanently embedded in the lines of my palms. I drive a truck with 160,000 miles on it. I live in a regular house, in a regular neighborhood, but I built a business that employs 40 people. I raised a brilliant daughter. I earned the respect of one of the most successful businessmen in Texas, and I learned that true success is not about how much money you have or what kind of car you drive. It is about showing up every day and doing work you are proud of. It is about treating people with respect regardless of their job title. It is about building something that lasts. Preston tried to humiliate me by calling me just a stinking mechanic, but here is what he did not understand. There is no such thing as just a mechanic, or just a teacher, or just a nurse, or just anything. Every person who works hard and does their job with integrity deserves respect. I do not know if Preston will ever fully understand that, but I know this: I am done apologizing for who I am. I am done letting other people make me feel small. I am done hiding my grease-stained hands. I am Mattie Martinez. I am a mechanic. I am a business owner. I am a mother. And I am proud of every single part of that. That wedding was supposed to be the moment Preston and his family proved I was not good enough for their world. Instead, it became the moment I proved I did not need their validation. I already had everything that mattered: self-respect, real friends, and a daughter who finally understood that success comes in many forms. So, if you ever find yourself in a room full of people who look down on you because of what you do for a living, remember this: their opinion does not define your worth. Your work defines your worth. Your integrity defines your worth. And anyone who cannot see that is not worth your time. I spent 30 years building something I am proud of, and nobody, not Preston, not his family, not anyone can take that away from me. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been judged or looked down on because of your job? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments below. I would love to hear from you, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already, because I will be sharing more stories about resilience, integrity, and standing up for yourself. And please share this video with someone who needs to hear it today, someone who has been made to feel small because of what they do. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, no matter what you do for a living, if you do it with pride and integrity, you are building something meaningful. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.